In today's video, we're going to be talking about midpoints. Now, you can see by the definition that a midpoint takes a segment and divides it into two equal parts. So M is the midpoint of segment AB because M takes the segment and cuts it into two parts that are both 9 units in length. So we call M the midpoint of segment AB. Now, our goal today is going to be to find where the midpoint of a segment is, given two endpoints of our segment. So let's go ahead and start doing that. In number 1, we have segment AB, and you can see that segment A is at -5, and point A is at -5, and point B is at 3. So one way we can do this is simply by counting the distance from -5 to 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units. Okay, so the distance from A to B is a total of 8 units. And so if I want to take that distance and cut into two equal parts, if I divide the 8 by 2, we come up with 4. So I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, and put a point here so that this is 4, and then this is 4. And we find that our midpoint is -1. Now another way to do this, if we want to find the middle of two numbers, that's called the median. And so if I have two numbers and we want to find the median of them, we simply do the average. So the average of two numbers is going to help us find our midpoint as well. So I can take our -5, I'll use red here, take our -5, and then the number 3, and if we add them together and divide by 2, so that's our average, adding them up and dividing by how many we have, we come up with -2 on top, still divided by 2, and then the result is -1, our midpoint. Let's do that same thing with number 2, so segment CD. From C to D, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. So when we take our 5 and divide it 2 ways, we come up with 2.5. So I have to count 2.5 from each space. So from 0 up 1, 2.5, so this is 2.5, and then from here to here should also be 2.5. 1, 2.5, sure is. So our midpoint here actually is the number 2.5. It's kind of coincidental. But our average will do the same thing. So if we have our two endpoints, 0 and 5, we add them up, divide by the 2 that we have, and we end up with 5 over 2, which is 2.5 or 2.5. Okay, so that's finding the midpoint on a segment where it's one-dimensional. In number 1, we just went left-right. In number 2, we went up and down. So let's try this on a coordinate plane where it's two-dimensional. So EF, segment EF, notice that E is at, well, when we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So -5, +5. While F is over 1, 2, 3 units, it's at 3, 0. So one way we did this in the past, when I just draw from F straight over, okay, and then straight down. So we start over at -5, and we want to go all the way to the right to 3. And again, that's 8 units, just like we had in the first one, and so we should be 4 units away. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's the middle of this one. Up here, this was a distance of 5, from 0 up to 5, just like we saw in number 2. So we should be 1, 2.5 units away. And so our midpoint should be at the location where these 2 points cross, right there. So the algebraic way or numeric way to do it, again, you simply are going to do your averages, the averages of your x's. So -5 and 3 add together, and then you divide by how many you have. Then we do the same thing with our y's. 5 and 0 add together. You divide by how many you have. And that point is going to be the midpoint of this segment. -5 plus 3 is still -2, divided by 2. 5 plus 0 is 5, still divided by 2. And And so we end up with -1, comma, 2.5. And again, you can see where we cross here. This should be the point, -1, comma, 2.5. So our formula for a midpoint is to simply add up your x's and divide by 2, comma, add up your y's and divide by 2. So take a moment and copy this down in your notes. And again, we will be using this in class, so this is the midpoint formula for any segment. But again, it's not the only way you can do it, but it is a verified method that will work. All right, let's put it to use. In number 4, we have segment GH. Now G, we have at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then down 1, so -6, -1 for G, while H is at 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, comma 4. So to find the midpoint, what we'll do, we'll add our x's, so -6 and 2 add together, we divide by 2. Every time divide by 2. We take our y's and do the same thing, -1 plus 4, divide by 2. -6 plus 2 is -4, and divide by 2. -1 plus 4 is 3, and divide by 2. -4 divided by 2 is -2. 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. And so we have -2, comma 1.5. So we should land 1, 2, comma 1.5 right there. But again, not the only way we have to do this. We can do our over and our down or up, either way. So going from an x of -6 to 2, that's a distance of 8. So we count 1, 2, 3, 4 units. To go from a y value of -1 up to 4, that's a distance of 5. Divided by 2, again, that's 2.5. So we'll count up 1, 2.5 right there. And where those two kind of come together makes our midpoint. Okay, so the middle of the overs, the middle of the up and downs, and there's our midpoint. Okay, so that's your information on midpoints. For now, we're done.